Hello, everybody. How are you? If you are still there, congratulations. Yes, we are live. Thank you. Can you hear everything?
Yeah.
So, can you hear everything? Can you hear me well? Can you hear Kyle? Hello, Kyle. Say hi to everybody.
Hi. Yes, I can hear you.
Good. So, hi, Aime. Hi, Anna. Hi, Amanda Vermilion, Nicole Newton, Karen Tawa.
Okay, I'm still live, right? I'll just go then and wait for the guys to come back as and when. So what I was just going to do was just a quick review of the books we've read over the last year at Tea Book Club. So just a little kind of background. Tea Book Club is an idea that I had sitting in my armchair looking at my shelf full of tea books just over a year ago. And
hi, Kyle.
Hi.
I saw Samuel was going somewhere. I don't know what happened. Probably the connection problem, so I hopped in.
Oh, okay, cool. Shall I just carry on, or did you want to say something?
No, I'm fine. Hi, everyone. I just joined in. feeling the space here.
So I'm not all alone. So Tea Book Club was an idea I had sitting in my armchair looking at a shelf full of tea books and wondering why I hadn't read about half of them. And I realized that one of the problems was actually having a reason to read them, because when you go to bed at night, you just want to read a novel or something simple to go to sleep. But actually sitting and focusing and reading on tea books isn't always top priority, much as you wish it is. And the other thing that I realized was that part of what I wanted was to actually spend time talking about the books with people and sharing, kind of, oh my God, that was a great book, or, thoughts or things that come up in the book that were interesting. So I put together the idea of Tea Book Club, and here we are a year later. So what I thought I'd do is just a quick rundown of, the last year of reading. So we started off doing a book a month, and then we switched to every 2 months after January. So sandwiched between the book of tea at the top and bottom, which was our very first read, and also our current read now as a kind of year anniversary read. So let me start with what we have. So we read The Book of Tea by Okakura Kakuzo, which is a tea classic, which I'm sure most people here have read. One of my favorite editions is this one with the introduction by Bruce Richardson, because it gives a lovely insight into Okakura's life. Bruce has studied and researched Okakura quite extensively, so it's really interesting to read about his life and why he came to put together the Book of Tea. So that's our first read. Then we read For All the Tea in China by Sarah Rose, which is the story of Sir Robert Fortune, who was the person who stole tea from China and took tea from China, took the Camellia sinensis from China to India, and is what originally founded the plantation gardens in Darjeeling. So, I mean, a major case of industrial espionage, as we would look at it now, but a fascinating story. And this is a really nicely written book because it's a bit sort of like a novel, but full of history as well. So a pleasant read. This was an early read, so it was quite a lot to get through in a month, but really good. And if it's something that you feel like reading on the train, I do recommend this one. It's really fascinating and just a different view of the world. There's also some really funny and really bizarre stories in there as well. Then last Christmas, we read Easy Leaf Tea by Timothy D'Offey, who is the owner and founder of Postcard Tea's shop in London, one of my favorite tea shops in the world. And this was a really light, pleasant read for Christmas. Some lovely little background in tea, beautiful photography, and some wonderful tea recipes and ideas for different brewing techniques and ways of serving and preparing tea. And it was really nice to see how this inspired some of our members to create their own special Christmas tea drinks and things that they actually even used for events. So it was lovely kind of to see the inspiration hitting there. And I recommend that as just something to look through and get ideas from. Plus, it's one of those beautiful books you can just have lying around. Then we read Social History of Tea by Jane Pettigrew and Bruce Richardson, which is, for a fairly thin book, it's encyclopedic in what's inside. Fascinating to read about the background of history. The research in it is excellent. And actually to go into all the details is really quite fascinating. It obviously focuses a lot on the UK and America. And it's really nice because Jane and Bruce have written their parts and brought them together. So you have Jane's voice telling you about English and European tea culture, and Bruce's voice telling you about tea culture and tea history in the US. So it's really lovely to kind of go between the two and read those two sides of the story, as it were, in the one book. And if you're interested in background on things like afternoon tea and how people drank and served tea, this is a great read. There are also some interesting recipes in there, such as a green tea custard made using infusing green tea into cream and making a custard from it, which I've yet to try, but I think would make an amazing ice cream. We then read Taius Sosen's The Story of Japanese Tea, which is one of the best books on Japanese tea I've read in a very long time. He goes into some wonderful detail, tells some wonderful history and stories, and it's really nice the way he goes and delves into all these different kinds of Japanese tea, not just sencha and matcha and gyokuro, which is kind of what we see in the West on the tea shelves. So he talks about some of the more interesting and rare teas, teas that are single origin, hand-picked, or ones that are from wild trees, the different techniques of growing, some of the fascinating history of Japanese tea, and also some really rare and interesting teas like the Japanese fermented tea, which is just really crazy and weird, but sounds absolutely amazing. So I'm really looking forward to trying that one day. Very good book, great reference book as well. And if you're interested in Japanese tea, then I would absolutely 100% recommend this because it's going to give you a lot of information. Then we moved on to Tales of the Tea Trade by Michelle and Rob Commons, which is, Michelle and Rob are two wonderful people here in the UK. They have two tea shops, one in Bath and one out in the country. And their book is just lovely. Written between the two of them, it's so full of feeling, it's so human. The way that they explore different things, they explore the different countries. Both of them write, so you have Michelle's voice and Rob's voice, which is lovely, and they each go to different countries, and or they each talk about different countries in the book, and they interview some wonderful people, and you can see some notes here. In the session earlier, I read several sections from this, which our members had highlighted as some of their favorite reads from the year. So beautiful, beautiful book, and personally for me, this was my favorite book of the year. And I'll reveal how it sits in the from club members who voted in just a minute. Then we read 80 Degrees magazine issue number 3, which is the red one. So technically not a book, but I thought the publication is so beautiful and the imagery so good and the story so good that it was worth including in TeaBookClub. And I'm very glad I did. A lot of people really enjoyed it. Beautiful stories. Not quite enough to read over 2 months, but we all really enjoyed it. And in summer, it was the perfect read to sit out in the garden with tea and enjoy. This was just lovely. And one of my favorite stories from the year actually was in here, which I read a section from earlier about a Taiwanese master potter in Taiwan. So very, very good. And a lot of our members really got into this and have started reading consecutive issues as well. So really excellent read. Then we went on to something a little bit more esoteric. The One Taste of Truth, Zen and the Art of Drinking Tea by William Scott Wilson. So I was expecting this to be a slightly easy book that we could kind of dip in and out of. And it turned out to be one of my personally, and I think for a lot of our members as well, one of the most challenging reads of the year. The introduction is excellent if you want to get a little insight and a little bit of knowledge deeper into Japanese tea culture, the Japanese tea ceremony and Zen and how that works together. Then it goes on to dealing with a whole selection of Zen poems and koans, so poetry and phrases from Zen, which are used in the tea ceremony, particularly in hanging scrolls, translating them and talking about them. And that I found very heavy going. It's something that you need to read in small pieces because each one is so philosophical, there's so much to think about and digest that actually reading it in one go, cover to cover, is really hard. But we came up with collectively some wonderful ideas for reading it, such as one of my favorite ones that someone suggested was having it, she's going to keep it by her kettle, and when she's brewing tea, she's going to read a little bit from it while the water boils or while the tea steeps, which I thought was an excellent idea. Other people used it as part of their meditation or their tea practice, sitting and having a moment and digesting one of the poems from there. And then now, as we're celebrating Tea Book Club's first year, we're doing a double read. So we're reading the Book of Tea again, because it's a classic and is going to become our yearly read, and something that I personally find changes every year when I read it. And we're also reading Cultivating Femininity, Women and Tea Culture in Edo and Meiji Japan by Rebecca Corbett, who is joining us tomorrow at our Tea Book Club session to talk about her book. And I practice and study Japanese tea ceremony myself, and this is fascinating. Really well written for what feels like it should be quite an academic book, which it is, and the research is phenomenal, but it's really easy to read, really pleasant, and it just, you get so into it. So I'm absolutely loving this and really, really looking forward to speaking with Rebecca tomorrow. So that's just a quick rundown of the books that we've read over the last year and where we're going next. Well, we shall wait and see. But what I did want to share with you was I've asked members of Tea Book Club to vote on and tell me which were their favorite books. So it's a little bit difficult to play because obviously people have joined throughout the year. So not everyone's read all of the books. So I did a point system. And in first place, the favorite book from the year as voted for by our members was Tales of the Tea Trade. So this was the one that our members and myself personally chose as our favorite book of the year. And I think that's just because it's so human, the stories are so beautiful, and it's really beautifully connected. Just a note, I will come and answer questions and respond to people's comments once I've finished the rundown of the favorite books. So I will come back to you. And then in second place is The Book of Tea, which I think is really beautiful because that's such a classic, and it's something that we all, I think, have read and will no doubt read at least once or twice more in our lives, probably more. So that was our second place book. And then in third place was 80 Degrees. That was our third favorite book as a club. And I think that's just because the stories in it are so beautiful. There's such a mixture of stories, and there's so many different parts of the tea world that you get to explore just in each issue, which I thought was really lovely, from contemporary to traditional, different historical places around the world, and things that were next to tea but not necessarily tea. So learning about the samovar was fascinating in that. And there's also an excellent article on water, as well as some beautifully evocative stories about tea places and tea people around the world. And then our joint third place was The One Taste of Truth and Easy Leaf Tea came in, sorry, joint fourth place. We've done three. So those are the next favorite books. So I just think that's quite interesting. And I'm so pleased that the three books that got first, second, and third in our little competition got what they got, because I really enjoyed all of them, and they are up there at the top of my list as well. So if you have questions or however we want to go on from here, please just shout, and I'm just going to have a little look and respond to what people have been saying in the messages. Yes, Infused by Henrietta Lovell, that is on our reading list and is probably going to come either Christmas or a little bit later in the new year. So I'm looking forward to that one. It's on my list, but I felt that I wanted to mix up the books a little bit. So I've done some different things. And that's one of the things we do, is have different kinds of books throughout the year. Thank you for the suggestions, Mark. Learning by Tea, that sounds interesting. Dan, love Nerd's Eye View. I love the title of that. I'm going to add these, by the way, onto my list of future books to explore. There's so many, but we can only read so many a year. Agreed, Dan, that those books are amazing. 80 Degrees is fab read. Thanks, Nicole. Yes, that's a great read, isn't it? Newton, the TeaBook Club, no, it's worldwide. We're open to people around the world. We have members in the US, in Canada, across Europe, and even in Australia as well. So anybody can join. And we have our regular meetup every month. So in the first month, so we read a book over a 2-month cycle. At the end of the first month, we have our social meetup, which is sometimes just a chat on a theme and share some tea with each other. Sometimes we will have a guest join us, like Rebecca's joining us tomorrow, or we might throw a little tea party or do something fun. And then at the end of the second month, we have our discussion, which is where we actually discuss the book in more detail now that everyone's had time to read it. We meet on the last Sunday of every month, and I've found a meeting slot that works for Europe and America and Canada. And for those in Australia, we have an optional extra slot at an earlier time so that they can join us. Well, they can join in as well. And then I record those sessions, and members have access to the recordings. So if you miss a session, you can catch up and see what the group chatted about in the recordings. So Dan is agreeing Tales of the Tea Trade and the Book of Tea in third and second place. Lovely. Cool. And first, oh, that's interesting, that selection. To join the book club, you can head over to the website, which is on my profile on here, but also I'll give you it here, TeaBookClub.org, and you can also find us on Instagram at Join Tea Book Club. And you'll find all the information there, or you can send me a message or an email, and I'm happy to help you out. Thanks, Newton. Look forward to seeing you. So we have 2 membership options. It's all explained on the website, and you have an option either to get the full package or to just get book titles and then join the meetups as and when you feel like it. Okay, I see a question about sourcing the books. So because we're across the world, I decided that I wasn't going to actually get the books and send them out to everyone, because it becomes a logistical headache. So I will give you, where appropriate, if a book has if there's a recommendation of where to get it. So for example, books that are published or written by people with a tea shop or with their own source of selling it, I'll recommend that because it's nice to support them. Otherwise, Amazon or your local bookseller is always a good bet. I do try and make sure that some of the books that we read are also available as digital copies so that you can get them online if that's easier. Cool. So, shall I, would you like to, what should we do now? Tea tourism books, I haven't yet. I haven't actually done like official reviews as anything like that, because I just keep it as part of the book club. But I'd love to include a tea tourism book in our reading list. It would be interesting. I like to try and make sure that we have quite a...
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Now I can hear you.
Good. Okay.
Yes, somebody was recommending Lee's book earlier, so I've got that on my list to explore. Yeah. So yes, I like to do a kind of a mix of books. So we cover different
Look,
subject.
so Liz. Mhm. Yep. So Lee is writing different books in tea tourism and has been for a while. So yeah, you can talk to her actually and like check the books she has. And yeah.
I definitely will do. Thank you. I mean, I think we have been a little bit heavy on Japanese themed books this year, but I do have a particular interest in Japanese tea, so it was a good place to start. But I want to make sure to include more books on other areas as well, and variety, like doing 80 degrees. It's something a little bit different from your normal tea book.
Okay, so I think that in general this year people drink a lot of Japanese tea. We can see also in the Nomad Tea Festival there are many activities dedicated to Japanese tea. So I was surprised because, well, the festival obviously was happening in Europe and we wanted, in a way, covering some parts of the European tea history. But we got a lot of people who are actually into Japanese tea.
Interesting. It must be the theme for the year, this year's trend.
Which is not a bad thing. Maybe it's because also I'm related to Japanese teas.
Possible. Like
yeah.
TeaBookClub.
So I don't know if anyone has any questions. I keep hearing myself twice. I don't know why. So I'm trying to type. It's better.
I think there's a little bit of a delay as well, isn't there, between me getting to you and back again.
For Kyle or for myself, it's fine. Yeah. 20 seconds. 20 seconds. Yep. So, Amanda is recommending us Life by Cup.
Just added that to my recommendations list. Thank you, Amanda. Best tea gift book for Christmas. Well, you've heard my top 3 for the year, our top 3 for the year.
And Lee is asking us, what is the best tea gift book for Christmas 2020?
Yes, I was just answering that.
So freaking.
The delay is special, isn't it? Well, I mean, so our top book this year was Tales of the Tea Trade, so that's an excellent one. There are a lot of great books out at the moment from a lot of great people. So I think one of the things perhaps is knowing who you're giving the book to and where their interest is. If they're interested in Japanese tea, then I would head straight to Taya Sosen's book, because for a Japanese tea lover, that's going to be amazing. If it's a more general interest in tea, then something like Tales of the Tea Trade would be excellent. They were both on my Christmas list last year, by the way, so that's why they're on TeaBookClub's list this year. I would also say something that is a great book for kind of like a casual book for someone who's got an interest in tea, but also someone who even isn't that into tea, but interested in the world and travel and stories and history. This would be a great Christmas book as well, I think. It's the kind of book that you might not pick up on your own if you were going tea book shopping, but it was given to me as a gift and I loved it. And it was one of those things that you wouldn't necessarily get around to reading because you'll read these other books first. But that would be a great little surprise Christmas gift.
Kyle, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. You have these little tapes around the books. Do you plug in like when you find the quote or something you like in the book? How do you, when you read a book, is that how you read it? Like what?
It depends which book it was. This one, why did I do lots of, I was doing something else with this book as well. So this book has loads of them because I was picking out different things on it. It depends on the book and what what else I'm using it for. These other ones, this was the passages that members had recommended or said were their favorite passages. So I was reading those out earlier. But yeah, I was using it or writing something or doing something that involved this book, and I made a lot of notes on that one. But I don't read like that normally. It's only if I'm looking for.
I was just curious because I saw like a different and.
The problem is afterwards I forget to take them all out, and it just goes back on the shelf. So they'll stay there for the next decade.
That's fine. At least you read it.
Yeah.
Since you like to read or trying to read the books, have you ever considered writing a book or writing a blog?
It's well, way back when I started off in tea, I did do blogging. A book is on my agenda at some point, but it's probably going to not be. It's going to be a very different area of tea world that my book's going to be on, probably, because I actually, as well as TeaBookClub, is just one of my little projects. I also practice Japanese tea ceremony, and I make fabric art for Japanese tea ceremony. So in the tea ceremony, you might have seen in the session earlier, they have like fabric cloths, special cloths, or fabric pouches that the tea caddy lives inside. So I make those, and I've just started doing some research I'm starting to research the fabric wares of Japanese tea ceremony and also the traditional textiles used in Japanese tea ceremony. So I think that will be a book one day, but that would be quite different.
Do you have any approximate year or month, like in 3 years, but you don't know? No,
I don't know.
timeline.
I'm just at the beginning of starting the research, so it depends how funding goes, and 3 years maybe. Let's see.
Let's keep this as a memory and then ask in 3 years, Kyle, if that's a thing.
Someone's just asking about my textile art. So my Instagram for that is @studio.
I am writing a book about tea-based dishes.
Cool. So I'm just going to check my other Instagram. Tea-based dishes. So cooking with tea.
Is that why it's called a tea chef? Now it makes sense then. Xenia has Instagram with the tea chefs.
Ah. Yes, there we go.
But I think she's having a delay.
Yes.
Can you make sure whether there is like a front stage or...
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Cool.
There is nothing in front end.
Lee asked Kyle, is it difficult to source the Japanese fabrics?
Yes, most of my work at the moment, up to now, has actually been using contemporary Western fabrics. That's kind of my twist, is that I use contemporary Western fabrics in the work that I do, but I do want to start using Japanese traditional fabrics as well, and that's also why I want to research them further, so that I get more of a rounded view, and it's something different because nobody's done that research. But yes, they are difficult, they're expensive, and buying them works in a different way from Japan. But it's one of the things on my agenda to find a source or a weaver that I can buy from direct rather than buying third party. So I just...
Oh. I just lost you for 1 second, but now I have you. I'm not sure you shared the wire. Oh.
So these are the things I make.
Where can we find it?
I put a link in there, Studio.
Oh, Studio.
So maybe I should make it.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
And I also have, the website hasn't been finished yet, but I also have a Patreon, and you can also find me on Etsy as well with the same names.
Oh. Okay, now we know where to follow you. I'm not sure whether you shared it while I was away, but what's the teapot behind you? Is that teapot?
This one?
Yeah.
It's just a little, no, this is just, I just put it there for some display. It's just a little antique teapot I picked up.
Any story behind? You just liked it and then picked it up?
I just saw it and I liked it and it was cute. It's actually,
it looks cute.
It's really cute. I love the gold, but it's really difficult. It's not very well designed. It's one of the, it pours really slowly.
I think it was built as an ornament. I'm not sure.
It was made for a restaurant or hotel.
Oh, okay. Thanks for
it actually
drinking.
has on the bottom that it was the property of a hotel or restaurant.
I take my ornament word back. Okay, it's for drinking. I mean, it's really cute. It reminds me of those one of, you know, when you see Beauty and the Beast, there are
the
mother and yes.
It's really cute, and it's kind of, I use it, but because I like it, but it could almost be better just as an ornament because it's not very practical.
It looks nice.
Yeah.
Yes.
It looks better than it works.
I'm just going through the audience.
Yeah. Yes, Dan. Indian silks. Well, this is one of the fascinating things, actually, when you start digging around, because a lot of these traditional fabrics that are used in Japanese tea ceremony, while they made in Japan now, a lot of the designs and the originals came from elsewhere, from China, from India, through the Silk Road, imported by the Dutch even, and they then became Japanified and adjusted and adapted and made and became part of the Parthenon of tea ceremony wares, but that all happened 300-400 years ago. So that's one of the things that I actually want to look at with my research is to go into it and figure out where these fabrics came from. So there's a collection of 400 famous fabrics which exist in the tea ceremony world. And part of what I want to do is to look into those and find out where the original designs came from and what that tells us about the story of this pattern, and how it's come in and maybe gone out of Japan again. And it's fascinating to actually see. And actually, Indian textiles are more commonly used in sencha-do, the sencha tea ceremony. They have a preference for Indian patterns and Indian textiles, while the matcha tea ceremony, chado, tends to, from what I've seen at the moment, this is just initial research, tends to use fabrics that come more from East Asia, from China and Vietnam, and then across the Silk Road, going as far west as Turkey and the Ottoman Empire, and the Byzantines. So it's quite interesting to see the different routes that these fabrics take into Japan.
Why is that?
That's what I want to find out. So the amount of fabric that's used in the tea ceremony pieces is very small. So these probably would have come from offcuts or leftovers rather than from actual big pieces.
Yeah.
But they've now become standardized and kept safe and special in the tea ceremony world. And when we're looking, just doing some initial research, you can find examples of these actually on existing pieces of clothing that are 400 years old and preserved in Japan, coats and jackets and things that were imported, and you can actually find those patterns still there.
That's very interesting.
But yeah, there's lots more to go into there, so we'll see where it takes me.
Yeah. Then shared Chagusa tea container with a cloth cover. So you can look into it later.
Oh yeah.
Thanks, Dan.
Cool. Thank you, Dan. Lee asking, what school of tea ceremony do I practice? I now practice the Ueda Soko Ryu, which is the Ueda Soko tradition from Hiroshima. So Ueda Soko was the founder, and he studied under Oribe. So we're a samurai or a warrior school of tea. So it's quite different from what you normally see in the merchant schools like Urasenke and Omoto-senke. When I lived in Japan many, many years ago, I did study Urasenke there for a year. But when I picked up tea ceremony again 3-4 years ago, I switched to Ueda Soko, and we're actually an online shachu, an online tea group with members around the world. My teacher lives in France, but he's Australian originally. Adam Somo, you might have come across him. And so, yeah, it's all very different, but I absolutely love it.
It's really interesting.
Where is Lee also asking, where's the collection of tea ceremony fabrics held? It isn't held per se as far as I'm aware. I've yet to discover if there's actually a physical collection, but what happens in tea ceremony culture is that at different points in history, lists were made, or meibutsu, collections, famous collections were made. So this is where at some point somebody will have gone through and looked at all the wares that were used by certain masters, and they've made a collection, and this becomes kind of like a codified collection of what are the right pieces or the expected or the appropriate famous pieces to use, and then those are then copied. So you have famous Chinese collection of pieces, which would be tea caddies and bowls, and then there's a Japanese famous collection, and so you'll see shapes that are repeated again and again, or styles that are repeated, and these are, that collection has been listed, and then it just gets repeated. So those don't exist as a complete collection because different people own those famous pieces. I mean, when we're talking about tea bowls and tea caddies, those pieces are worth ridiculous, unimaginable amounts of money. So no one person owns them all. And most of us will probably never even get to touch one of them. The fabric, because the fabric can be rewoven and reproduced. I don't know what the oldest examples are yet. That, when I get into the research, that'll be one of the things to look for. But also what we've come across is some fascinating. Turns out the Japanese used to keep, this is going back in over the centuries, keep scrapbooks of textiles. So when something wore out or a garment was thrown away, that people would collect the little pieces that were left and paste them into books. And so we started tracking down some of these books, and they're 200, 300, 400 years old, and they have all these little pieces of fabric in them. So I don't know yet where the research is going to take us, but it's fascinating, and it will be interesting to see at what point these fabrics became Japanified and became kind of regulated into the tea ceremony world. And a lot of times, from what I understand at the moment, that they came in because somebody famous used it. Therefore, it becomes famous.
Okay.
So you have books that list the famous tea fabrics, and the information that is in those normally is so-and-so used this for this piece in this year at this tea ceremony.
Wow.
And then maybe something about the pattern originally came from China. But most of the information that the tea ceremony world is fascinated by is about who used it, when and why, and for what piece, not about the actual fabric's history. So that's what I want to get into, is actually where the fabric came from.
A really interesting topic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It started poking. Fascinating.
In the scrapbook, does it only have textile or have some notes in it too that you can track?
Some of them do, some of them don't, from what we've found so far.
But aren't there any textiles? Because I remember we had a tea ceremony and they show us a tea caddy, and it was like covered by a piece of cloth, and they told us not to touch it. We had to like handle it just by the strings, to make sure it didn't break, because apparently it was so old it could disintegrate. So it was super fascinating.
The old fabric, that's the problem with textiles as well, is that they don't last as well as ceramics do.
Yep.
But Japan is also amazing in that you have these collections that have been sealed and locked away for hundreds of years. And that have been preserved in storehouses or collections. So even if it's not actually the piece that was used in the tea ceremony, we might be able to, and well, I've seen that we can find examples of those fabrics. So yeah, I mean, you have the famous example of the storehouse in Nara that was sealed in 800 something or other, and wasn't opened until the early 20th century.
Wow.
So it was a time capsule. And there's bound to be, well, there are fabrics that have come out of that, that were from that storehouse. But yeah, you have these amazing examples in Japan. So it'll be interesting to see where we end up.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Actually, it's a very interesting story. No, you go.
Oh, yeah. Amy wrote, I wish my sensei would do online courses too. Like, how are you enjoying online course and this like a virtual environment? Anyone in the comment can also share their experience that they are experiencing digitally. Like, we can all share and then have the conversation.
So for tea ceremony, because my sensei, because we're spread around the world, we have one-to-one lessons online. And then when lockdown happened this year, he started to do group keiko as well. And I know that some other senseis have started to do online as well because of lockdown. Yeah. It's different. It's very different to when you learn in a group. It's very different to going to your sensei's house or your sensei's tea room each week and having lessons. For one thing, you have to have all the equipment. You have to collect all the dogu. So you collecting the dogu. So dogu is tea wares for the Japanese tea ceremony. So you have to collect them, and then you end up having more pieces, so you can do different style of temai. But also you learn to use mitate, so borrowed pieces, as stand-ins for the traditional Japanese pieces, because we have to, which is quite fun because it does keep it very alive, and you end up mixing borrowed pieces with traditional pieces, which is really kind of makes it unique and different. But the style, it takes a bit of time to get used to doing it online, because obviously you don't have, sometimes you'll be told something's not in the right place, but if you just turn the camera, then it is in the right place. And it's a different style of teaching, but I'm so grateful that we can do it now. It does make such a difference.
How about you, Sanya? How are you enjoying digital life?
So it's been interesting. At the beginning, when there was lockdown in everywhere, but not in Sweden, I stayed home because I didn't want to go out and risk to get coronavirus. So I started doing Instagram sessions and whatnot. After a while, I decided that I had enough, so I stopped doing them. And I started actually cooking a lot with tea. So I was posting a lot until I started collaborating with you to run the festival. Then I stopped doing everything else to dedicate my life to Nomad 50 Festival. So yeah.
It's a lot of work. I don't know how I did by myself last time.
Yeah, I wonder too.
A lot of work.
It's a lot of work for two people. So just for yourself, I still not. I cannot imagine how did you do it all yourself alone.
I think because it was in the beginning of lockdown, and I need to find something to focus on, zoned in, and then I chose the project to zone in. So because when you are in lockdown, like I'm based in Melbourne, Australia, so the restriction was a bit tough in Melbourne. So I think I was just on fire, but now I think back, yeah, I totally understand why you stopped Instagramming for your account.
I couldn't do everything. No, it was impossible. I was writing a blog post about Japanese teas every week, and I stopped the last weeks because there was no way. Also, I had to take a day job, so I'm doing the day job, and then I'm at festival, and I'm running my business for tea. I think it's a bit much. So I'm just surviving. That's it. But I wanted to say before, Kyle, that topic is really interesting, and not many people actually go into this kind of things. So I think it's good that you actually join us and show us what you're doing, because we have everybody talking about senta and banta and Japanese teas or whatever. But then this is a very niche, specific, very special thing to share. So I think it's really interesting.
This was my first time hearing about fabric textile related to tea ceremony.
Yep, I agree.
I think one of the things that for me in tea ceremony, the textiles are important, but they always seem to come second place to the chawan or the natsume or the teire or the other dogu. And one of the things I want to do is I actually want to bring them up to the same level of importance. So like in tea ceremony, when you ask about, so the haiken is where you put the special pieces that you've used, you put them out for display so that the guests can have a look and look at them close up and hold them personally, and ask questions about them. And people always ask a lot of questions about the tea bowl, who it's made by, the story behind it, all those kind of things. The shifku, which is the little pouch, will normally just be told, this is its fabric name, end of story. So I think it's nice if those can start being special pieces. So my clients that I work with, we have a lot of discussion about choosing the fabric and choosing the different colors that we use for the cord and that kind of thing. And I sign them inside. I stitch a signature into them. So they become something that has a story and has its own history. Because they're fabric, they're slightly more disposable, and they will run out and they won't last 400, 500 years like a ceramic would. But this is the nature of it. But I think it's nice if things can change that. And I want to do things like make contemporary pieces where I use a contemporary item and then make a shifku for it. But I also want to start making shifku where I design the piece from the shifku in.
Oh, nice.
So I've started working on an idea, a concept. I had an idea of actually using the fabric and the pattern of the fabric and how I can choose how I make the shifku, the size of the shifku, so that the pattern of the fabric comes alive. And then I'm going to have a chaire made to the right size to fit the shifku.
Oh, really cool.
Or work the opposite direction. So, just change things, do it different.
But see, on that note, if you remember, even though it's called the tea ceremony, actually no one is told where the tea comes from in the tea ceremony. When I was studying, I was doing urasenke chado. The less important thing is actually the tea you're drinking. Everything else is very important. The way you move, you have to count the steps depending if the tatami is from Tokyo or from Kyoto, because it has different measurements. It's like a mathematical thing that you have to do to be able to just like stand up gracefully and just go around, which I didn't. It was very tough for me. So I always, think about it, and it's like the tea is the least important thing in the whole tea ceremony, even though it's expensive and it comes from particular people in the industry. They never tell you when you're in a tea ceremony. They tell you the name of the person who made the bowl, or the region of the person who made the bowl, or where it's coming from, but that's it. Nothing about tea, which is interesting.
Well, in our school, we have you have the set phrases in tea ceremony that you have to ask and say. In our school, we actually have part of it where you ask what the tea is. And then the host will tell the guests the name of the tea and who made it. But it's interesting because what you say, do you listen to Tea Life Audio?
No.
It's a great podcast on Japanese way of tea on Channel U.
Tea Life Audio.
Is it in English?
It's in English, yes.
Okay.
My teacher often speaks on it a lot. And it was interesting. They did over 100 episodes, I think, before they actually did an episode on matcha.
Oh, nice. I will listen to it.
Exactly what you're talking about. We tend to the thing that is at the core of the whole.
Yeah, because even if they tell you, I mean, maybe in Urasenke they did. I just did a long time ago, so I'm not remembering all the sentences and whatever. But it's only that for the tea, nothing else. And the bowls are really important, and all the utensils are really important, and all the movements are really important. And the tea is not that important.
This is one of the things that
I thought tea was considered important.
No, it's the least important thing in the entire ceremony, actually.
Well, I'm not sure which school, but isn't it like for whisking and making nice matcha, they practice like 8 hours?
They practice 8 years, but
everything takes a lot of practice.
Yeah.
And one of the things with the tea ceremony world, which is it comes across in Rebecca's book that we're reading at the moment, where it's amazing that tea ceremony has lasted the way it has for so long, and that we have this this tradition and this tea culture that has all of these regulations and stuff in it. It's lasted because of that, but then also having all of the regulation about the right number of steps and all that, it's training so that you can be free is kind of the theory, but it takes such a long time to get to that stage to be free that I think sometimes we miss that tea ceremony is actually expressive and creative, and that the training and the correct steps and the right and all these parts are a guide to get us there to the right place. And there's, especially in I hope I'm not going to get into trouble for saying this, in the Japanese way of teaching and sharing and teaching the tea ceremony is very much this very, very structured approach.
It is. It's like
which has a purpose and it's good, but then also it kills some of that spontaneity. It kills some of that importance of the tea, because we're so worried about everything else being exact, and it takes some of the life out of it. The creativity and the now, and it's such a double-edged sword. I've been reading and speaking to some tea friends of mine a lot about this recently. It's such a kind of a double-edged sword between
it is.
Expressing yourself and expressing yourself through tea, and doing it properly and following the rules and following the steps.
Discipline. For me, felt like discipline. You have to be very disciplined and take care about everything from the beginning to the end. You cannot leave anything out of luck. You really have to focus. It was quite. I mean, it was interesting, but at the same time, quite hard. It's the aesthetics are beautiful and the idea of it is fantastic. But when you are doing it at the beginning, especially, it's a bit hard.
Yeah,
that's how it felt for me.
I could feel how you were feeling when you were speaking. Our midnight tea party time's over. We can continue, or we can adjourn here.
I think we can open the session for whoever wants to stay jamming, and we can go to bed. Actually, I think we deserve it.
Absolutely.
After all this long day of stuff that happened, in the end was all well, but it's tough.
But one more day and we got this.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's exciting.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Great thing you've done.
Thank you. Thanks for joining in. Thanks for everyone in the comment. And
lovely.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah. Tomorrow again at 2 p.m. We're here. Oh, remember the time changes in Europe. So at 3 a.m. actually will be 2 a.m., which, changes things. And then there was a change for one session. The one from Not Just a Kappa, Islay, starts at 2:05 instead 2:15. So just in case, don't forget that. Be here on time. And see you tomorrow. And hopefully everything will go smoothly and no more surprise.
Yes.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.